interdimensional, said Fogarty in a low voice as she stared ahead. What?
It's okay, Randy. Take your time. I never seen anything like that. Don't know where they came from. They? Shadowy gray outline, moving stick figures beyond the tree trunks. I'm drawn in now, where the grass dips on the crispy leaves. But it's summer, leaves aren't crisp in summer. The light spreads across the field. Very bright, brighter than a full moon. Then I saw them. Pipe cleaner beings formed a semicircle in front of me.
I like average people in extraordinary situations. Two characters start out this book. One is just an average guy. He's been in the Air Force, he's done his duty, and he's just an average guy. Then we have Junior Janus. Junior has inherited all his money from his father under nefarious circumstances, and he's using that leverage and that money to further his criminal ambitions. Junior Janus arrives on a private plane for one reason, actually two, to further his ambitions in importing counterfeit electronics into the United States. His primary mission is to extract money from an Andre Fournier, alias Dana Kovar. The money will go into President Richardson's re-election fund. Kovar has his own purposes in donating this money, $5 million. Junior's arrival begins a long trail that moves that money through numerous accounts and into the president's coffers. Kovar merely states that he wants to talk to the president. He wants his ear. Turns out he wants more than that. Then we go to our average guy. He's at work in a garage. Works on cars, enjoys working on cars, he likes cars. He looks on the TV monitor several months later, and he sees Junior Janus coming out of the courthouse. He's on trial for grand larceny and perjury. Harry is a cop, and he's also Randy's best friend. He calls him on the phone to wish him happy birthday. Randy tells Harry that Junior is still harassing Julie, the latest incident being after one of her TV reports on Channel 4. Harry is all excited about the birthday party that Julie, Randy's sister, is holding for him at Mulligan's tomorrow night. And then he mentions that President Richardson will be traveling to Camden Bay next month. After Harry hangs up, Eddie Conover comes out of the back. Now, Eddie Conover is one of the premier aggravating characters that I've ever created. Listening to Eddie Conover, you wonder why Randy is even working there. I provide a lame excuse that Randy's father, Pappy, has known Eddie for many years, and that seems to be the connection for Randy getting the garage job after he exited the Air Force. Eddie is cheap, obnoxious, and likes to dig people. He gives Randy a lot of grief about only being 5'7", 165 pounds. Later, Randy is with Julie in his truck. It is at this time that Julie says that Junior may have bribed Judge Hennessy himself during the trial. Randy looks up at the Janus Tower, overlooking Lake. Randy has had it with her being harassed by Junior and later travels over himself to the Janus Tower, a multi-storied skyscraper overlooking Lake Van Buren to the east. Randy is accosted by two of Junior's thugs who split his lip and hurt his back. Junior then calls him on the phone and tells him to stay away from the tower or Sid and Alex will hit him again. And he says, "If you come by again, you Air Force monkey, I'll kill you." Randy starts giving him grief about inheriting everything from his father and mumbles as he leaves, rubbing his split lip, "I hate that punk." Salisbury Condominiums is where Randy lives. He's watching President Richardson on his monitors as he lifts barbells. Because of Eddie's comment and being beat up by the two thugs from Junior, his lip still hurts and his back is hurting. He moves outside with his dog Brownie when he hears something. The light brightens across the field, and then the air becomes very heavy. In the brightness, he forgets everything that's happened. He wakes up 2 days later in his bed with no memory of the last 2 days. He senses something deeply wrong about the president speaking in Camden Bay next month. And he pictures clouds and something called Ouroboros and Fournier. These things swirl around his head as he lays in bed. His lips are now smooth and healed. He's bare-chested and in his shorts, and when he lifts his hand, he sees an almost pitchfork-like letter inscribed like scar tissue into his left hand. His answering machine reflects the concern of his sister and everybody else. They're wondering why he didn't show up at his party at Mulligan's and where he could be. Everybody is getting nervous. When he finally makes contact with his sister, he calls her by her childhood name, Mookie. He speaks about the Chinese letter on his hand. She immediately brings him to Camden Bay Medical Center. Inside, they find he has a metal sliver in his abdomen, and he has a strong craving for Snickers bars, which he eats one after another. He doesn't remember anything about the previous 2 days. On the radio, Mayor Ames of Camden Bay talks about the presidential visit. Again, he keeps repeating the name Fournier and Ouroboros. Julie asks him to stay over at her place. He says that Pappy will bring him over later after he talks to Eddie. Then we have the first inclination of what's happened to Randy as he goes over to Eddie's quick fix garage, and Eddie threatens to fire him for missing work. A phone call from the doctor alerts him to the fact that he needs the metal removed from his abdomen. He's unable to have an MRI at this point. Eddie, being his obnoxious self, is asking where his racing form is while Randy is talking on the phone. Randy's vision is very keen, keener than usual, and he spots it up the top of the tire rack across the garage. He power jumps to the stacks in a big whooshing motion, and then drifts slowly back to the garage floor. Eddie's hand is now hurting from where he shook hands with Randy when Randy came back into the garage. Randy's skin had brightened blue and expanded outward like a huge, massive muscle as he jumped up to the stack. Eddie asks him to jump again, and he jumps to the ceiling and then floats back to the floor. We meet Pappy, Randy's somewhat scatterbrained father, who has a big President Richardson sign on his front lawn. Eddie calls President Richardson the Duke, because he sounds like John Wayne, although nobody seems to be able to make the connection. Again, Randy is munching Snickers bars. Harry arrives at Julie's condo. He wants to know what happened to Randy. He's certain that somebody abducted him. He woke up speaking President Richardson's name. Harry says that they should call John Wharton from the FBI about Randy, or perhaps Colonel Briggs, whom he knows, through some intelligence operation. He walks with Harry to the courtyard, then whooshes 40 feet to a trash barrel, crushes it with his bare hands. All the while, his body turns bright blue and expands outward. Now Harry is definitely calling Colonel Briggs. Briggs agrees to fly up there. It's at that time they call him back about Junior. Something else is going on down at the docks. He calls Chief Baldwin and lets him know what's going on with Junior. Randy is beginning to wonder if the government did all this. Julie's boyfriend Rodney shows up at her condo. He never liked Randy. Randy and Rodney get into a little tiff where Randy lifts him 3 feet above his head. It's at that time she gets the call. Harry has been shot by Junior's people down at the docks. After Rodney leaves, Randy says that Julie should ditch him. The scene next opens with Junior at Nastero's restaurant. He tells his bimbo companion to scram. He's upset because Harry Ridden's gonna make it now. Next at Camden Bay Medical Center, we see Bulldog Baldwin. A man was called Bulldog because his jowls hang halfway down his neck and he talks like a bulldog barking. Diane Ridden, Harry's wife, and his parents arrive. Eddie then arrives on the scene with his lawyer, Don Melvin. Small arms fire erupts in the corridor. Everyone dives to the floor. Bulldog fires his weapon. 2 men in ski masks shoot at Randy's inflated body until the ammunition runs out. The ammunition hits with a thud and just falls mangled to the floor. Randy whooshes forward and hurls him against the wall unconscious. Briggs arrives from a helicopter on the roof. He says, "Come with me, son." Then he asks Julie if she'll go on the air and say that Randy's expanded body was just blue Kevlar body armor. They leave by chopper with a cute little blonde-haired lieutenant named Fogarty. It's at that time that Briggs says they chose you. You were abducted. The chopper lifts off. Briggs says he's been waiting 25 years for this. And now Eddie Conover is calling Randy the creature, Kron Man. Once at a secret location, CX7 in Wyoming, Fogarty checks out his metabolism and realizes that he can press over 800 pounds above his head. A gruff agent named Alvin Decker talked to him earlier because Randy had mentioned President Richardson. At the CX7 location in the lodge, Eddie Conover is seen on TV talking about Kron Man. Briggs orders him brought up to CX7 for hypnosis and memory erasure. Junior is in the Janus Tower with Evelyn, his secretary, and Dutch Corcoran, his lawyer. Julie reports about blue body armor. He tells Dutch Corcoran to get his guys who shot up the hospital out of town, north of town. He calls his flunky, Rudy Morales, to bring them to the West Side campground and kill them. He puts in a call to Julie Wilson and talks about that armor guy at the hospital. But Julie has been brought up to Wyoming with Randy's dog Brownie. Randy undergoes hypnosis. This is when the crux of the matter comes into being. After the heavy air, the hypnosis reveals that Randy was looking at moving stick figures floating from somewhere else. His hand hurt at that time as they scraped away at the skin. And then he talks about some war along the ocean and interdimensional beings. After the hypnosis, where Briggs realizes what's really going on here and how Randy's powers are created, he orders Randy reactivated into the Air Force. Eddie arrives several days later with Bulldog Baldwin. Harry is showing some response back at the hospital but still hasn't come around. They keep a cover story about Randy going on a binge and not remembering anything for 2 days. They can't tell the general public about interdimensional beings. Somebody named David Cross is very suspicious of Randy and doesn't trust him. But the crux of the matter is Eddie Conover. Eddie Conover, the goof who cannot be hypnotized. Outside there's thunder. Junior is upset with a man named John Slocum for not contributing to Richardson's campaign. No one else is giving money either. He calls Kovar about the cash that he's supposed to get for the president's re-election campaign. Kovar is ready to convert Swiss bank accounts into Richardson's campaign. Outside in Wyoming, a crackling noise shakes the lodge. Randy sees a huge tree tumbling toward the car with Pappy and the FBI agent inside. He whooshes outside, lifts the tree above the area, and throws it far into the lake. John Wharton, the FBI agent's never seen anything like it, while his father nonchalantly just says he wants to have a meal. Later, as the tests go on, Briggs plays back the video of Randy's body inflating, but in reality, his human body is unchanged. There's an outer, impenetrable shell, a barrier with no atomic structure at all. Randy had alluded to some great war, but Briggs is certain that these beings would have to understand something about the future to come up with that theory. Fogarty speaks about how 4 spacecraft came down in a Utah canyon not too long ago. They used stronger drugs on Randy. Briggs calls General Slater, who wants Randy Wilson to resume a normal, average life. But under the influence of deep drugs, he outlines a possible war with places and events. The scene then switches to Switzerland as Dutch Corcoran talks to Junior. They meet with a man named Solomon, CEO of Aegean Imports. He mentions something about German agents following them. Junior is ready to sail to Italy. He calls Rudy Morales back in the United States and tells him that Randy Wilson was taken in by the Air Force. They then travel to Locarno, Switzerland, and head back to the United States. Randy is out in Nevada now, being measured for speed, for endurance, and muscle capacity. As the chopper lands back in Camden Bay, descending over Eddie's garage, Eddie runs out and actually salutes Briggs, who gets upset and tells him that he shouldn't be saluting him. He's a civilian. Brownie runs by Eddie, growling at the garage owner. In back, they've built a high-level communications area for Randy and Briggs' division. Eddie is not allowed inside. The blue floor and the bright computer light hurt Randy's eyes, and this seems to be his weakness. They are able to access the division intranet through this module, and there are sleeping quarters off the back. The FBI agent John Wharton calls from a baseball game and says he'll be at the hospital tomorrow to meet with Harry as he goes home. Eddie tells Randy to say hello to the nurse, Nanette, but Randy mentions to him that this woman hates his guts. When Randy goes out the next morning to meet Wharton in the Jeep, it's Fogarty driving the Jeep. Fogarty drives him over to the hospital. She says she was brought along in this project while she was in high school. She made studies of other dimensions and they took her on board. She looks at the mark on his hand. It's the same as other encounters they've studied in different parts of the world. Dimensional travel is real. Harry moves without the walker and Bulldog Baldwin comes inside. He says that guys from St. Louis had shot Harry via a contract through Junior, but they can't prove it. Shipments from Junior also have come from different parts around the world, but they don't know exactly where. Junior, in the meantime, is upset with one of the property managers and talks about the Shanghai deal that he has with Kovar. Electronic rip-offs reaping extraordinary profits are brought into this country, but he knows that something about Randy Wilson and the wild story told by Eddie Conover on TV lends him to believe that Randy is Kron Man. Junior opens one of the wood crates with some of his people down at Warehouse 16 along the docks. He takes out a huge knockoff computer that he will sell. They have 200 coffins that will be used to transport this illegal contraband around the country and rake in the profits. Junior then gives the word, because Harry Ridden is still alive, to flatten him like a pancake with a truck. Kovar has a high-level conference in the Middle East where they test a simulated nuclear device. The Oporus project is in good shape, and the cash has gone to Richardson. Force is the only option for their crusade. Rudy and another man comes in and smacks Eddie. They want to know why everyone was away from Camden Bay for several weeks. They take Eddie away in a van. At the South Medical Center, Harry is going to be going home. Janus has expanded his legal team with Dutch to fix the jury tampering charges. Briggs calls Randy in the module. Randy needs to become Kron Man right now and head down to the Janus Tower where Eddie is being held in the penthouse. Randy goes to the window and flies upward across the city and toward the lake. He veers toward the Janus Towers. Up at the high level, he breaks the glass as Sid and Alex shoot Kron Man. Randy crushes both barrels of the guns of the men who beat him up before and calls them the same word they call him, flunky. Out on the ledge, he grabs Eddie and jumps out the window. With Eddie screaming, they descend to the street and land back on the sidewalk. Briggs is on a large-scale monitor inside the module from Wyoming. He's learned that Junior has accepted $5 million from Fournier and the transactions are being traced. Fournier now has access to the president, and he fears that Junior knows all about Kron Man now. The plan is out for Colbert. He will take his half of a synchronizer to a hotel garage and link it with a shipment of a synchronizer from Cleveland. Nuclear material will be sent by conventional torpedo to a freighter out on Lake Van Buren. Then a drone will lift the bomb and zero it in using the synchronizer to where the president is speaking. Briggs calls them from Crescent City, California, investigating another incident. He says how Junior's father was an importer, and until Junior took over after his death, the enterprise was above board. Harry is released from the hospital. As he arrives at his house and starts walking down the street, a huge cube truck heads at high speed toward him. The truck is rumbling down Garibaldi Street. Randy arrives on the scene in a windy turmoil, lifting the truck into the air and out of sight, where it's later dumped into Lake Van Buren. His wife says, "What was that?" And Harry says, "That, sweetheart, was Kron Man." The truck is found to be stolen. In the Janus Tower, Junior Janus realizes that Randy Wilson is the creature in his office. The truck driver, Siva, died a mile and a half out into Lake Van Buren. They set the agenda with the people from the presidential campaign for the evening presentation by the president. Inside the module, Briggs tells Randy that he's going to be brought to a secure location called the Delta Complex. Fogarty shows up that evening with pizzas, and as they wait for the president's arrival, they sit and watch a classic movie with Gable and Colbert. Junior's in the helicopter. He circles over Lake Van Buren. Kron Man had dumped that truck into the lake. He's convinced of it. He's issued an order to find Kron Man. After talking with Melville's office, he realizes the president has left for Camden Bay. He moves up to the Grassley warehouse. Two men move into the garage as Randy and Fogarty are watching the Colbert Gable movie. He calls Bulldog Baldwin and SWAT teams arrive at the garage. Both men will not admit they're working for Junior. At that time, he learns the Secret Service agent Decker is coming to town. Out on Lake Van Buren, the freighter North Atlantic is moving slowly under diesel power. A man named Collins is looking at a blue-winged drone that will bring the awaited nuclear material, arriving by surface torpedo, high above the air into Camden Bay where the president is speaking. Colbert is now in New York City. He arrives at Camden Bay around 1 o'clock. The synchronizing device that will match his own synchronizing device is now in Cleveland. In the Hotel Ralston garage trash barrel, that synchronizing device will be placed for Colbert, where he will click it together and send the signal out to Collins and the men on the ship. Collins doesn't care because he'll get cash 6 months from now. In the Janus Tower, Julie is brought surreptitiously over to Junior. Turns out her boyfriend is working for Junior. He wants the truth about Randy, the superhero, and he wants Julie to be his girl. Julie refuses on both counts. Next morning at Bay breakfast, Randy and Fogarty are with Bulldog Baldwin as Decker is about to arrive. They order breakfast. When Decker arrives, he tells them they're all going back to Virginia and his men produce automatic weapons. Briggs is arriving by helicopter and he sits down in the parking lot across the street. Decker immediately leaves the area. Briggs salutes everyone and he says that Randy's being brought to a complex that's more like science fiction. Inside the Pavehawk helicopter, Colonel Briggs and Randy hover over Lake Van Buren. 650 feet below the lake is this magnificent, futuristic complex. Fogarty has been placed in a city apartment. She'll be with him later. The defense security base below is a prototype for an Earth-Moon base. Material has been brought in through Canada and away from the shipping lanes. Below, the Collins diesel engine on the freighter moves slowly as the helicopter flies over. Once on the surface boat, John Wartland comes on the channel. A man named Ahmed Rashid has deposited money in Saudi banks on the same day for Boros. Torpedo arrives at 11:06 with nuclear material. It's placed on the freighter and then attached to the drone. Inside Eddie's garage, Randy dials Julie but can't find her. Julie is missing and he calls Bulldog. Wharton calls him. Middle East money has been diverted into the presidential campaign. At the Hotel Ralston, Colbert finally arrives. He takes his silver device. In 12 hours, he'll be in Canada. Boros is the group and the money is from the Middle East. Bulldog shows up at the module door. He said that Julie Wilson was seen this morning leaving the Janus Tower against her will. Randy says he'll take care of Janus. Bulldog calls to bring in Dutch Cochran. He can't connect Junior and Boros. And Randy says it's unnecessary to have this risk to the President of the United States. Junior shakes hands with the President at the affair that evening. Kovar has been delayed according to Junior and his fuming. Dutch tells him he's making a scene. And he says, I know I couldn't trust that son of a bitch. Kovar is at the trash barrel. He picks up a red plastic bag and the device snaps into his device. The signal would now be monitored by the freighter. In just a short time, Richardson would give the speech in the square. Everything is in place. At the Colburn Apartments in downtown Camden Bay, Briggs and Fogarty, Randy and Wharton monitor the situation. Bulldog has questioned Junior, who says he knows nothing, but he has obtained a list of his warehouses which he emails to Randy's phone. Decker has questioned Junior about the donations. At 1:16 a.m., Wharton is on the phone with Decker. Kovar is a businessman from France. They've tried to get the president to leave Camden Bay, but he won't leave. Fournier has registered at the Hotel Ralston. They all rush to their Hotel Ralston at 2:45 a.m. There's nothing inside of Colbert's suitcases. Again, they ask Richardson to leave the area, but he won't go. Wharton calls the director of his agency. The director has spoken directly to the president, but the president is going ahead with the speech. At 3 a.m., Randy talks to Junior. He tells Randy his dirty little secret is Kron Man. He wants to confirm Randy's identity. He wants to know who and what he is. He has until 9 a.m. Randy notices that the exchange came from a town named Grassley. They get the list of warehouses and figure out that Junior has called from 22 South Main Street. At daybreak, Randy leaps into the sky. The sun is burgeoning over the lake. Traffic is starting to move, and he follows the state road north. He begins his descent and hurries toward the warehouse. Junior is interrogating and berating Julie. Junior wants Kron Man to do his bidding. As Randy bursts into the scene, Junior gets away. He finds out that the coffins are being used for overseas electronics. Again, they try to convince Richardson to leave. The president will not go. The freighter North Atlantic at 9:44 a.m., they launch the drone off the deck. Collins calls it a gruesome, deadly conspiracy. The park where the president will speak is filled with people, including Randy's father, Pappy, his dog Brownie, and Pappy's girlfriend, Petunia. Wharton and Briggs are ahead, and Fogarty stands with Randy. Kovar is Fournier and is in Canada, according to Wharton. The mayor introduces President Richardson. The president goes to the podium. Wharton then announces by phone that they've captured Fournier. Fogarty mentions that Randy woke up thinking about clouds and names, and she says, "What kind of clouds?" When Randy looks up to the sky, he realizes what he had seen when he woke up were the clouds that are above him in the park. As he scans toward the lake, he spots the drone far away. Beyond the buildings in the alleyway, he rises into the sky. Richardson's speech tapers away. Nobody knows where Randy is. The entire sky brightens and is a shockwave. Fogarty blocks her eyes. Silver platinum clouds widen, but then reverse into a pinpoint. And then everything is quiet. The presidential press secretary said everything is okay. Unfortunately, that cloud, reversing into nothingness, took Randy Wilson with it. At the West Side condos, Briggs explains how he spun the entire event, saying it was a water sprout from Lake Van Buren. However, there is no Randy. There's a warrant out for Junior's arrest. Kovar had helped Junior ship in the illegal electronics from Shanghai. He is heading out to the Delta complex where they had brought some of Randy's things. He asks Julie to come along. She's hesitant but then agrees to fly with him to Delta. They then board a mini-sub and dock at a connector tube to the partially completed module. It's all top secret and will be fully armed eventually. Brownie is sniffing once they get inside the module, and then he retreats into the other room. It is Briggs who sees Randy come out of the other room, and he says, "Incredible." Everybody wants to know how he did it. He forced the explosion inward, and then he gives the line that will be his signature line to Fogarty, because in case you haven't noticed, Fogarty, I'm Kron Man. In the epilogue, Junior is in the tower with Rudy and Dutch. He's gained full immunity for speaking up against Colbert, but he keeps asking, where the hell is Randy Wilson? Wilson is Kron Man, and he swears that he will have Julie Wilson, and he's going to locate Kron Man, find his weakness, and take him down.